don't mind, I'll touch base with you.
Right, I mean, it's, you know, I did talk to him, he's a nice guy, it's not that, but I didn't really understand about the district stuff.
Sure, no, and fair, that's the first I've heard of it too.
Right.
You know, that there's areas.
Out at meeting, since we were out of town,
I
don't.
think this is something they've done, I just think internal, that the city's done, and that's fine. Get a map and then answer. Okay,
I don't mean to be, but, you know, ask them.
not at all.
That we still have drains, and some of them didn't get alleviated by a flood, so, you know.
Well, I make no mistake, my alley doesn't should do. Or,
There's some that are really poor, but if they don't have a drain, maybe they can prioritize.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
It was that switch. It's a tricky switch, yes. Mayor,
Yeah.
this pass, it's ready for signature.
Oh, good. Oh,
And
good.
then I believe Dave
This is
needs
easier to
accept
read
it.
like this,
Yes,
too.
Exactly.
Thank you. Council could be seated. I'd like to get us started here. Oh, who's doing? I will. Thanks. Welcome, everybody, to the City Council regular meeting of April 1st. We'll begin with the invocation and a pledge of allegiance. Please stand if you are able.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, by your divine grace, Shed your guiding light upon us this evening in our public charge. Grant us that the business that we are about to conduct and the decisions we are about to make will be both pleasing in your sight and in the best interest of our city's future. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk take roll?
Yes, ma'am. Member Sierra?
Present.
Member Barentine?
Present.
Member Cuesta?
Present.
Member Martinez?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Present.
Member Wink?
Present.
Mayor Olson?
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Next is the consideration of minutes of the previous session. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of March 18th, 2019?
I move to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of March 18th, 2019.
Could I have a second? Second. All right. Any concerns about it? If not, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Item 6 is a recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. Only those who meet the deadline can speak in this section. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner, and council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation in the section to 5 minutes. Written materials for presentation to council may be submitted to the city clerk as the speaker approaches the podium, and a USB port is available for public presentation. First up tonight is Marcia McGilley, the Executive Director of the Aurora-South Metro Small Business Development Center, SBDC, and she's here to provide update on our strategic economic partnership. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor Olson, council members, for having me come and giving me the opportunity to speak with you about the Small Business Development Center's strategic partnership with the city of Englewood. It has been a very prolific one in the last 2 years, and I'm going to update you on that. Please think of us as your boots on the ground, small business boots on the ground, assisting those that are starting and growing businesses. We are beginning the 3rd year of our 3-year partnership, so we'll be coming back to you mid-year to go forward for the 20 to 22 program later. Just so you know, highlights are that we provide one-on-one quality, free, and confidential counseling to business owners. We have free and low-cost workshops, and we have specialized programs. I'd like to dive right into the economic impact, and I will give you this report tomorrow via email through community development, because you always ask me questions and say, please add something, so I'm going to add that tomorrow before I send the final version. Jobs created in the last 2 years, 152. Jobs retained due to the programming that we've supplied, 157. 5 new businesses have started. Capital formation, over $400,000. Sales increase reported by the citizens that have come in for consulting and training is $4.3 million in increased sales. We're really happy about that. And 4 government contracts to the tune of $5.5 million have been realized. Please note that citizens report after consulting and after workshops this impact. It is self-reported from them. We don't make it up. Programs. Englewood Business Workshops, we have 8 scheduled this year, which is, I think, 2 up from last year. The Leading Edge Business Plan course will be beginning in April and ending in June. It's a 36-hour business plan course. And we have been very successful with the Small Manufacturers Advantage program, which is a collaboration with Manufacturers Edge. The 3 of the events for this year, just so you have them, and we will be sure they get on your calendars. In March, we just had on March 22nd, the 3rd annual Englewood Resource and Lenders Fair. It was very well received. We had over 40 people there, and all the resources and lenders for small businesses. It was quite a success. That was our 3rd annual. In May, we will be doing some kind of a small business week activity. We're not quite sure what it is, so stay tuned. We'll keep that you updated on that. May 1st will be the 1st annual artist event, Englewoood Creates, and we're a part of that, helping those entrepreneurs that are creating artistic endeavors and making sure that they're doing the business of the art as well. In October, we will repeat and have a 2nd annual National Manufacturing Day event. Last year we were at Palm DCS, and we will choose a different manufacturer this year, and it was well received and very successful last year. And in November, we will repeat the Small Business Saturday events again this year. It was quite successful last year. Just so you know, Darren and I and the City of Centennial and quite a few other people in the South Metro area last year started the Denver South Business Resource Partnership. We get together every other month and talk about economic development and how we can help each other as resources, and that is moving forward in quite a wonderful network and resource for us. I have presented to ACE and the Chamber Board of Directors multiple times in the last year, and if you recognize my voice, you might know that it is the background voice in some of the videos that the city has done. I do have a little acting on the side and have done voiceover work, and so I volunteered to do that after Darren twisted my arm, and it was quite fun to do that. And I think I've seen one, and it was good. The visuals are awesome. You have a wonderful provider. Second part of my report is going to be a little bit about programming instead of that. In 2017, we coached. We are consulting with all those wanting the initiation grants and the acceleration grants. We had 6 in 17, 6 in 18, and 2 so far this year, and 2 manufacturer grants. We've helped over 200 clients. Let's see, and you asked me last year, with a 97% satisfaction rate. We do ask after every session, are you happy? And we have a 97% satisfaction rate. Last year you asked me the industries. So 13% were general services in the last 2 years, 8% retail, 7% manufacturing, 7% healthcare, 6% construction, 4% construction, professional and scientific technical services. That's my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
I do have a question. I'm assuming that it's a lot of businesses from throughout the metro area. Is that correct?
Actually, all I reported on are Englewood citizens only.
Great.
But yes, we do have a much larger territory. Tonight you got your numbers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I should clarify that next year. Thank you. Anything else?
I'll follow up on that. Can you give us that report in some kind of written form? You must have it up there tonight, that we can have, maybe send it to our interim city manager, and she can send it out to all of us, because all that data goes really fast out of my head. But it's impressive, so I'd like to see it. I didn't know the events, you've sent us emails on that, but if you could send us any summary of those, that would be great too.
Perfect. We'll do that in the morning.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Next up is, actually it's going to be Stephen White, because Mr. Padilla could not make it tonight. So Stephen White, the District Director from the Small Business Administration, Colorado District Office, here to address council regarding the Emerging Leaders Program. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Olson and esteemed council. Thank you so very much for allowing me to steal a couple of your very valuable minutes. My name is Steve White. I am the lead lender relations specialist for the Colorado District Office for the entire state of Colorado, representing the United States Small Business Administration. And I do have the honor of serving as this year's Emerging Leader Program Manager here in Englewood, Colorado. The United States Small Business Administration's Emerging Leaders Program is a convenient pathway for Englewood small business owners to receive a mini MBA-style course to develop and implement a 3-year business development and growth plan. Thanks to the City of Englewood, the Emerging Leaders Program is free of charge for Englewood small businesses. The only cost to the business is a dedicated time and effort commitment to the program. Currently, the program is offered in over 60 cities across the country via local SBA district offices and local partnering organizations. The state of Colorado has the marked distinction of hosting this program for 10 consecutive years. In 10 of those years, the City of Englewood has graciously hosted this program. The state of Colorado can boast 165 Emerging Leaders graduates, and of those 165, 32 of those graduates hail from your fine city, one of which served with distinction in the class of 2016. I do believe you know Mr. Brad Nixon. He is an example of emerging leaders done right. Thank you for giving us Brad, and we give him back to you. The 7-month program provides Colorado small business owners the tools, training, and networks to turn growth plans into action. Over these 7 months, participants are given the opportunity to work with experienced mentors, attend specialized workshops, and develop connections with their peers, Englewood city leaders, and the financial community. The end result of this executive education prepares and encourages emerging leaders graduates to move on to the next level of growth, to help them emerge as self-sustaining businesses that create jobs and continue to develop communities. And at the conclusion of training, these burgeoning entrepreneurs produce a 3-year strategic growth action plan with benchmarks and performance targets that will help them access the necessary support and resources to move forward. Mayor Olson and Council, thank you for your time and your attention. Thank you for choosing to intentionally invest in your local small business community. Pending your questions, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Mr. White? We'll probably have some comments from council after when it's done. Mayor Pro Tem, you're going to, okay. Member Barentine has a question.
Could I ask a question? Are you also going to be providing information as well?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. I'll provide that through Darren and make sure you have that.
And thank you for serving with the SBA. That's very nice.
My pleasure.
I have another question, Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. I was fighting back a sneeze there, which is why I didn't jump in, but I won the battle. How many?
Glad I gave you time.
Thank you. It helped. How many hours total are there in that 7-month course that the participants go through?
So for the total course, we begin on May 15th. Each class is 3 hours long. It's every other Wednesday, and then we graduate on November 20th. Outside the course, there are about 100 hours of extracurricular classroom work, plus 4 executive mentorship team meetings. So there's quite a bit of time involved.
Sounds intensive. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up is Mr. Doug Cohn, here to speak about historic preservation. Surprise, surprise.
Good evening. Doug Cohn, 3051 South Marion Street. First of all, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your support and the sponsorship and encouragement for the Veterans Memorial Celebration that we're going to have at the end of May. And then, if you remember back in December, I talked with you about a man named Thomas Gwynn, the paralyzed guy who made a living sharpening tools. Tonight I want to talk about another fellow. It's an inspiring story. You know, as we go through life, we have challenges and setbacks, you know, physically and mentally and spiritually. Hank Gench was the oldest of 3 children born to Henry and Barbara on September 4th, 1926. He and his younger brother Alvin and his sister Elizabeth grew up down the street from their grandparents in Englewood, Colorado. Eager to do his patriotic duty, Hank enlisted in the Army after high school and served as a combat engineer with the 25th Infantry Division in the Pacific during World War II. He finished his service to his country and returned to Colorado to seek an engineering degree at Fort Lewis A&M College in Durango. In 1949, fate intervened and an automobile accident broke his back, leaving him a paraplegic, confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Amazingly, Hank considered this tragic event only a temporary setback. Although he would never walk again, he had full use of his upper body, and over time he learned to do amazing things with his hands. With no formal training, he taught himself wood carving and soon combined that talent with his interest in history, especially the interest in the history of mining in Colorado. To make his life easier, he invented the wheelchair transfer board, so to make it easier for people to transfer from the wheelchair to a regular kind of chair. He invented that. Hank set about recording Colorado mining history in the form of dioramas. With intricate carvings of miners and their equipment, he carefully constructed each miniature scene, complete with oil-painted backdrops, tiny plants and animals, while his friend and business partner, Joe McPhee, built the wooden cases that housed the displays, and he wired them for electricity. The displays depicted the miners' journey across the eastern plains to the gold fields. and their subsequent successes and, in many cases, disappointments and defeats. I met Mr. Gench's next-door neighbor last week. Herbert Bannister lived next door to Mr. Gench. He helped convert the garage into a workshop so that Mr. Gench could build the dioramas. Eventually, the team completed so many detailed and historically accurate panels, they decided to open a museum in Central City in the late 60s, and they would showcase their creativity. In addition to the dioramas and text panels, they built 2 life-size animatronic mannequins that greeted and interacted with the visitors. They opened a second exhibit at Buckskin Joe, the Western-style theme park down near Canyon City. These 2 venues were popular and tourists were quite successful for a number of years. When Hank and Joe made the decision to retire, they split the collection into thirds, dividing the mining dioramas between the National Mining Museum in Leadville and the South Park City Museum in Fairplay. And the trail traveled to the Goldfield dioramas to the Elbert County Museum in Kiowa. The 2 animatronic robot guys were given also to the Albert County. In addition to his artistic livelihood, he also authored a book, The McPhee Story, about one of the early pioneers and his trials and tribulations in Middle Park. He was also very actively involved with Denver Branch 49 Annual Fleet Reserve Association, the Trout Rodeo. The Trout Rodeo is a yearly fishing competition for amputees, paraplegics, and physically handicapped service personnel. It took place at the Twin Cedar Lodge on the South Platte River west of Sedalia each year, and Hank carved a special trophy for the winner of the contest. He passed away on January 8th, 1995. I find stories like this really inspirational, that it is possible to move past the trials and the tribulations and disabling situations and do some good things. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, does anyone have any questions? Thank you. That ends our scheduled public comment. I'm just going to remind council that I've been kind of going down the line for remarks. So Member Martinez, are you willing to make remarks tonight at the end of all this? Okay, great. I just want to give you a heads up. Seventh here is a recognition of unscheduled public comment. The same holds true that I said before. This is a time when you get to speak for 3 minutes, and sign up was outside tonight as you came in. And first up tonight is Mr. Jeff Frazier here to speak about Cora.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Frazier. I am at 2898 South Grant Street, and I'm going to try to go multimedia tonight. That was from the March 11th study session. So CORA, the Colorado Open Records Act, fundamental goal is that all public records should be open for inspection by the government who works for the people. Colorado Supreme Court's determined that public officials emailed discussing public business or expenditure of public funds. Nobody's interested in your personal emails. but those are public records because it's important in the decision-making process about how public monies get spent. In the video, Member Barentine admits she's not comfortable using her city email address. I'm familiar with this. I actually forwarded some of her emails among other council members last year to determine whether something was being hidden or not. Turns out everything was being hidden because everything was being forwarded to a personal email address and then responded to on that personal private server, which I know there's been a lot of hubbub about in other cases. You know, this isn't just to point out this specific act. It's really in the interest of everybody in the city to, like, as the city attorney said, we should develop a policy for this and make sure that what's happening in the public's name is on the record. In that particular request, it wasn't responded to thoroughly, as can be shown through other CORAs that were properly responded to. So I'd encourage other groups and like Englewood Citizens for City Transparency. This seems like something they'd be interested in to get behind a formal policy so everyone can be on the same page and keep our government transparent.
Thank you. Are there questions from council?
I'm going to take a point of personal privilege since I was brought up specifically, and I want to assure everybody that I fully complied with the core request.
Councilmember Barrington, let's wait until the remarks time, okay?
I'm taking a point of personal privilege because I was specifically brought out that I did not comply, and I'm telling you that I legally complied. However, since that time with the meeting, as is evidenced from an email that all of you were copied on, I have spoken to an attorney, and there was some concern that this particular thing coming up to study session was a political maneuvering. So I have publicly made everybody aware that I am doing all of my business through the city as I responded to Mr. Cuesta's email, and I think all of you are very aware that I'm responding to all of the citizens now through the city. So I appreciate you bringing it forward. I certainly thought about it, discussed it with an attorney. I don't kind of appreciate the way it all got brought up, and I certainly did legally comply with your request. The assumption that something was there is not the reality of it, but I do appreciate the concern, and I have since come into compliance. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Cuesta, do you have a question?
No, point of information. There was not a reply to me. I believe it's to Councilmember Sierra, but just so that we're entirely clear as we speak to this record up here. Thank you.
Sorry, what? I didn't hear you.
I believe you replied to Councilmember Sierra, not to myself. You stated the reply was to Councilmember Cuesta. It was not.
Oh, I do apologize. You're correct. I got you too confused. It was a reply to Councilmember Sierra, but what I meant was that I copied all of council and the city manager, I believe, as well, and maybe the city attorney's office.
We will be talking about that later. Further questions for Mr. Frazier?
Let's try.
All right, thank you. Next up is Ms. Vicki Hoffman.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and Ms. Hoffman's here to speak about sewer bills. Maybe could we have that also shut off? Not that I don't like seeing myself up there, but it's weird.
Hello, Vicki Hoffman, 4630 South Bannock. I had a different topic I was going to talk about tonight, but I wanted to talk about the sewer bills. I've given you two different bills. One is for our house in Englewood. One is for our house in Centennial. And last year, for our house in Centennial that we pay to the city of Englewood, we paid $346.13 for the year. The other thing that was weird on this bill is it shows that even though this bill was due in July of last summer, it shows that there's a 7% sewer rate increase on the bottom of the bill. That's why I highlighted that, because I don't even believe that council had approved that rate increase at that point in time. I got to listen to the mayor-manager meeting recently. I was on vacation. And it seems that my questioning regarding the sewer bill is actually funny in the eyes of the city interim manager and the mayor. And it's not funny. Here is our bill for our house in Englewood with the rate increase. It is more expensive for a house in Englewood that owns half of the sanitation than it is for our house in Englewood. Our house in Englewood, or in Centennial, is twice the size and almost a half an acre. This makes no sense. I don't care about boundary maps. I don't care about maps. I want an explanation as to why the citizens of Englewood are paying more than outside districts. That doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem fair. I would like an explanation other than, oh, that's the South Sanitation Englewood District. Apparently, you know, it's okay, but it's not. Englewood citizens should not be paying more. And then I'll also just follow up briefly that on February 1st, our alley was supposed to be graded. I got an updated phone call today, and they don't even know if it's been done. It hasn't been done. They don't know when it's going to be done. And I let member Cuesta listen to the message because now they're doing a different district planning area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hoffman? Seeing none. Move on to the next is Ms. Sian Dickerson. No topic given.
Cohn Dickerson, 2835 South Pennsylvania Street, Englewood, Colorado. New signs went up at parks about animals needing to be leashed, and many of my neighbors are up in arms. The sign reads, "All animals must be on leash at all times." In tiny letters below, it says, "Per Englewood Municipal Code 7-1A-3. In the actual code, this is titled "Running at Large," and says specifically, "It shall be unlawful for any dog or cat owner to allow such animal to run at large." The sign's language clearly is not what the code says. Not only does the actual code not mention leasing, it specifies dogs and cats. The definition of animal in Title VII excludes dogs and cats. This language is not clear, simple, or understandable for the public, and is misleading and confusing. Code enforcement and the police do not follow the rules consistently and have never given tickets for unleashed cats. Code enforcement gave a 200 ticket to a man in a wheelchair. The dog was not causing any trouble or running at large, though they threatened to impound the dog. The new signs went up behind closed doors through parks and recs under the direction of the council liaison and code enforcement and police, when not one of them has any legislative authority to do this. There was no transparency, no public notice. This is not legal and was never discussed with the committee responsible for advising on enforcement of Title VII, nor discussed with the council. How is the public supposed to know that this was happening? And why and how did a $200 fine get passed for off-leash when the code cited says nothing about animals in general or leashes? Why are you giving such authority to Parks and Rec and more to the police and code enforcement to interpret and modify rules when they don't follow the codes as written, nor have authority under the code? Why do Parks and Rec and code enforcement and police decide these misleading signs need to be posted and a $200 fine levied at will? This negligence of council and staff is no excuse for abuse of code, and citizens want this to stop. Stop it.
Any questions for Ms. Dickerson? Seeing none, thank you. Next up is...
I do have a question.
Bless you. Councilmember Barentine.
You said there was a $200 fine. Did you find where that was in the code?
No, it isn't in the code as far as I know.
I apologize. Is it posted on the sign that there's a $200 fine?
No.
Okay. And your basic concern then is that this was a change in the interpretation of the legislation or a change in legislation?
It's a change in the interpretation. There is no legislation that says all animals need to be leashed at all times.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cuesta also has a question.
You bet. Well, question is for City Attorney Brown. City Attorney Brown, when signs are going to go up in any capacity throughout the city that cite some sort of a city code, are those typically moved through your office for approval first?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
When did you notice that these signs just appeared?
About 2 weeks ago, I happened to watch for such things, but the first anybody knew about it was when they issued the $200 fine ticket to a man in a wheelchair, and it wasn't even his dog. And the dog wasn't causing any trouble anyway.
Was it at the park close to you, or was it all parks?
I don't know. I would assume that if they were going to put up a sign like that, it went to all parks. It would be kind of unusual to have it just at 2 pocket parks in my neighborhood and 1 Bates Logan Park. But they aren't going after dogs that are causing trouble. They're only going, there were 2 elderly dogs that were laying down in a pocket park, and they tried to give their owner a ticket for having dogs at large.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Barentine also has a question for you, Ms. Dickerson.
We're going to give you some exercise. I would appreciate it if Councilmember Martinez would note that I'd like to have a council request on these signs and whether it should have gone through a process with us. And when you do your update, please, whether the process was averted and whether we shouldn't have, whether they had the authority to do that. So if you could, Councilmember Martinez, please note that. And then, did I state that accurately? Do you believe that that's part of the issue?
I believe that the content of the sign is not accurate, and they had no right to, as far as I know, they have a right to put up whatever signs they want, but if they're going to cite a code, it better relate to the code and not be something totally different. And it better be announced publicly so that people know this is coming.
Okay. So process and then the content of the law. I'm sure Councilmember Martinez has noted that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Tammy Williamson, here to speak about short-term rentals.
Hi, I'm Tammy Williamson, 4198 South Washington. And before I begin, I would really appreciate it if the city attorney would pay attention to me when I speak. You really should pay attention to the people you hurt. I've gone through so much in the several months that I've been coming here, talking about why this nuisance property next door to me isn't shut down yet, being on an R1C zone. And, it's getting expensive for me. We had to leave town for spring break because I remember last spring break living there. And I'm really glad that I did because I missed apparently one hell of a bachelor party. I don't know how many of you would enjoy having strippers in and out of, your neighbor's place, but, I don't really care for prostitution. So, this is wrong that it's been allowed to go on for so long. It's wrong. And it is getting expensive for me. And I'm going to start tallying every time I can't sleep in my own bed because there's noise next door. I'm going to tally every pound. I'm up to 40 pounds now since this guy started his Airbnb. Every pound I gain because of it. I am going to put a number on all of my prescriptions that I've had to get since this guy started his Airbnb. I'm going to have all my cars appraised, all three of them that have been hit and run 4 times. And I'm putting a number on that too. This is ridiculous. I'm suffering. I really am. And this guy who doesn't even live here, he lives in Yakima, Washington, Brad Sicoli, has been schmoozing this, the city planning department, telling him, oh, I'm going to reduce the number of people I have. But what he doesn't say is that he's turned his top floor into a flop house. He's still going to have the same amount of people. He still is having the same amount of people. I came home from my vacation with a bunch of garbage in my front lawn at 11 o'clock at night from this bachelor party. You know what? When I was gone, I didn't need to take any of my pills. I didn't shake once. I didn't pull my hair out that whole week. Please. I'm dying here. Does anyone care? Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Council, may I have questions? Anyone have any? Seeing none, thank you. That ends our unscheduled public comment. We now have time for council member to respond. And if anyone else has a council request I'd like to add in, if council member Martinez misses one, we certainly can take that.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming. Marcia McGilley with the SBDC. Looks like she has left. But thanks for the update. The numbers on the economic impact report are very encouraging. I love hearing that. And looking forward to our continued partnership. Thank you, her group, for doing so much to support our businesses, and looking forward to the report so we can digest the numbers a little bit further when she emails that out. To Steve White, looks like he left as well. Thank you for the update on what your group does and supporting our local business leaders. Doug Cohn, thanks for your stories as well. Always appreciate hearing those. This one tonight was an inspiring reminder about creativity and kind of perception of what you're going through and how it can be viewed in a variety of ways. And it's also a good reminder about how many wonderful inventions have been born out of citizens of our community. So thank you for sharing this story with us. To Jeff Frazier, thank you for bringing up this issue about personal email usage. It's a good reminder for us all to not use our personal emails for city business. I know we've talked about it over and over, and we absolutely should not be doing it, so it's a good reminder. Also a good reminder about not emailing all of council to accidentally start a meeting. So thanks for bringing that up to our attention. Always good to pay attention to that. Vicki Hoffman, thanks for coming to talk about your sewer bills. I have a council request on this one. Can we get a follow-up on the previous council request? And maybe, I'm not sure how we would outline the information in a different way than what was provided before, but obviously there's still some clarity that needs to happen over the different sanitation districts. So I don't know if council has anything else to add onto that, but making sure that we get this clearly outlined what these different billable items are and making sure that it's clear. Let's see what else. Ms. Dickerson, thank you for coming up with this. This I have a council request for. I would like to see the language on the new signs versus the language on the code. Also, if there are any fines associated with that particular code for the penalties, where the signs are located, which parks, if they're only at parks, and what is the process for posting new signage? Obviously, if council members have addendums to that, add that on. For Ms. Williamson, thank you again for coming. I know this process has been very painful and upsetting and frustrating, and you've gone through an awful lot, and I'm sorry about that. I wonder if we can get another status update on this nuisance property as a council request, and with addition to that, a possible number of calls for service related to this property. That might give us a little more just additional information. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item up is Agenda Item 8, which is Communications, Proclamations, and Appointments. And we do have a declaration tonight for April 19th, 2019 as Arbor Day in the city of Englewood. Could I have a motion to approve the proclamation?
I move to approve the proclamation for Arbor Day.
In a second?
I'll second.
All right. Do you want to vote before I read it, or do you want me to read it after I vote? Oh, here to present first is Mr. Dave Lee from Parks and Recreation.
I'm sorry, I didn't have any plans to present anything. I was here to accept it and then invite council to our two celebrations.
Okay. Do you want to tell us about those?
Certainly. We're having two celebrations. The first one is at Clayton Elementary School on April 19th at 11:30 a.m. We are entertaining 200 fourth graders. We are going to tell them about Arbor Day and how it began. We also have a climbing demonstration from a ropes climbing in the trees from a local arborist, and then we will be handing out seedlings to all of the elementary school kids to take home and plant. The second day is the 20th of April. We have our annual tree sale that day, and it starts at 8 a.m., and that will be at Cushing Park in the parking lot. And if you would like to come, please come early because people start lining up about 7:30 to get the best selection of trees.
Great, thank you. Any further questions about this proclamation? I'll read it and then we'll vote. Declaring April 19th, 2019 as Arbor Day within the city of Englewood and encouraging all residents to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed and with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the United States and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in the city of Englewood increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, whenever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas the city of Englewood, Colorado has been recognized for 34 consecutive years as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways, and whereas the state of Colorado will celebrate Arbor Day on April 19th, 2019. Now, therefore, I, Linda Olson, Mayor of the City of Englewood, hereby proclaim Arbor Day in the City of Englewood and urge all Englewood citizens to support our city's efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Further, I urge all Englewood citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Given under my hand the seal of this day, 1st of April, 2019. Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next is agenda item 9, consent agenda items. Could I have a motion to approve consent agenda items?
Move to approve consent agenda items 9A1, 9A2, and I beg your pardon.
Yep, you're right. 9,
is that correct?
Yeah,
and then
9C
1
and 2.
And 2.
Yep. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right. Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. We have no public hearing, so agenda item 11 is ordinances, resolutions, and motions. The approval of ordinance on first reading. First one is CB 10, the co-sponsor agreement with U.S. Small Business Administration for the Emerging Leaders Program, which we heard tonight. Staff recommends that we approve this bill for ordinance co-sponsoring the 2019 U.S. Small Business Administrative's Emerging Leaders Program in Englewood. And here to present is Economic Development Manager Darren Hollingsworth.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of City Council. This evening, the SBA has presented information about the upcoming Emerging Leaders Program, which will offer a series of workshops in the city of Englewood. This is a great honor for the city to have the SBA back and consider the city again. All of these sessions would be offered in Englewood Civic Center between the community room and in the library, and this has been very well received. I think it's worth noting that the SBA approached the city of Englewood this year to bring the program back after our enthusiastic support for the program when they were here for 2 previous years. That concludes my comments. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, council? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve 11A1, co-sponsor agreement with U.S. Small Business Administration for Emerging Leaders Program.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Next up is 11B1. This is CB9. Staff recommends City Council approve by ordinance the municipal purchasing policy. Staff Representative Director Maria Sabata from the Finance and Administrative Services is here to present or answer questions.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight we are requesting City Council to approve by ordinance the municipal purchasing policy, Council Bill 9. I don't have any further comments. We've talked quite a bit about the new procurement policy proposal, so I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Actually, let's have a motion to approve first.
Move to approve 11B1, Council Bill 9, Procurement Policy Ordinance.
I second.
All right, any discussion, council? Member Barentine.
I again got feedback. I appreciate the work that you've done on this, and I appreciate that you have not been in the city very long, but we have not followed the procedures when it was 25,000, and I think it's wholly inappropriate until we have some guidelines that are followed, that we not quadruple the amount that we're doing. I will again note that when a comment is made that there has to be a level of trust rather than we are putting forward a policy that we are going to enforce, that is something that ends up coming up as a level of discussion amongst my constituents, and I am still saddened that that's the take that this is being done. I have some very justified concerns about raising this like this, and I've voiced them. It's not a matter of trust or some kind of comment on your job, and I am saddened that it was ever put in those terms by you. It just made me very sad. So past that, I think I've brought up some very legitimate issues, and I cannot support this at this time. I hope that whether it's $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever, that we find some way to actually make sure we enforce this and then have consequences when it is not. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
I also have gotten some feedback from constituents on this, and it is not a trust issue with me either. I've been very pleased with the things that you have brought forward since you've been on staff here, and I greatly appreciate that. But I do think there is some wisdom in making sure that we have policies that we are following before we move forward and increase the amount. And so I cannot support this at this time. It's not that I don't support it, because I do believe at some point that it is necessary, but until it's demonstrated that we're following these policies. So I agree with Councilmember Barentine. I hope there's some way to illustrate that they have been followed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Member Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do appreciate all the work, and I know it was a great deal. And I agree that the purchases coming in before council for approval do need to be raised. I would like to see it go to 50,000 as opposed to 100,000, going from 25 to 50, which I think is a better increment. I would also like to see the sealed bids remain at 25 or 50,000, even 25. For those reasons, I will not be supporting tonight, but certainly appreciate the need here and all the work that staff has done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilmember Wink.
Thank you. One moment, please. Actually, if somebody else wants to go, I just lost my place in my notes. 1 sec.
We are on 11A2.
11.
Here we are. Okay, B1. So my view on the topic is that we discussed this in study session with Director Sabota and reached consensus to bring forth this ordinance for approval. We did make 2 recommendations for 2 of the columns. This is all in our packet, but I do remember that night in the discussion, and I don't recall, unless I'm absolutely missing something, all of this disagreement about these levels of the financial piece. I don't think we would be here. I just think we discussed it. We made recommendations. You made those added changes per recommendation, and now that we're on the dais, where it's time for us to make decisions and move forward, I have 2 concerns. One, that a lot tends to be voiced in this room over and over or differently than when we have discussion time to do so in study session. And I just don't know if we're following good methodology for proper decision making and real opportunity to talk through things and get the right pieces of information. It just seems shocking sometimes that we come in here. It's as if the study sessions didn't occur at all.
Thank you, Ms. Wink. Councilmember Cuesta?
I think there's several things flawed about what Councilmember Wink said just now. I'd point to the study session itself. I wasn't present. I missed one of them, and so I wasn't able to voice concerns at the time. Secondarily, to think that somebody might move something forward that night and not change their mind in 2 weeks of hearing from constituents and other people throughout the community is strange to me, that there isn't more pliable forms of thought there. So I'm surprised to hear that from Councilmember Wink, that once she's made her decision in study session, nothing will change until she gets to the dais, because I think that that's common in not only human nature, but I think that's good representation. Thank you.
Member Barentine.
Councilmember Wing, you may want to go back and listen to the meeting at the study session, because I voiced the same concerns that I just got done voicing here. I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Councilmember Wing.
Member Barentine, continue.
Okay. That discussion happened. I think it was brought up that the issue that we had that was most publicly done was a spending on an emergency basis of $230,000, which is well above this amount, and this council never held anybody accountable to that, and just kind of felt backed into that. And since that's even over the $100,000, I thought that was a good example that I brought up at study session, that we're not following these rules. We also had a house mitigation. We had some issues that a contract that the city attorney spent that was over that never got answered. And part of the answer, I think the discussion that we had, was that we were told it was onerous, that it wasn't expeditious, that it wasn't timely. And I don't think that we set forward rules for transparency, for discussion, for this council to know how the money's being spent as we represent our constituency, should be based on whether it's convenient for the staff. And that's how I felt about it at the time, and I've since backed that up, and I think I've stayed fairly consistent with that conversation. So I think that's a pretty broad misrepresentation of what the study session had. Although I will defer to Councilmember Cuesta as well, that we want to make sure that we also leave an open mind and always feel ready to go ahead and have a different conversation if that should happen as well.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
And in adding to that, we never make decisions in study session. We can have consensus to move it forward, but a decision is not made. And really, the reason that we have 2 times to vote on ordinances is because it is possible to change our mind, and it is possible to hear from constituents and learn new information. So I'm a little bit concerned that there's this expectation that if we're going to move something forward, that all 7 of us, if it comes forward from a study session, need to rubber stamp it. I believe there was a discussion in the study session, the same as the discussion here this evening. But in the meantime, I also have gotten more feedback from constituents, and so just wanted to address that.
Thank you. Member Martinez.
Thank you. we have discussed this multiple times in the study session and here, and we were able to work through a variety of changes in this document. So I feel like we've all done our best as a 7 to come up with this grid. Of course, we're able to change our minds at any time. And really, it comes down to what the majority of council wants, which is how we work through many of the agreements. So I think we're at a good place. The majority of us voted on this the first time. We'll vote on it again tonight, and the majority will make the decision. So, of course, that being said, any ordinance can be changed by any council also going forward. So I just kind of want to restate the obvious, but I'm ready to move forward on this tonight, and we'll be supportive. I think the changes that we made as we worked through it make a lot of sense, and so I think we're arrived at a better change through those discussions. So I will support this tonight.
Thank you. Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays, the 2 nays being Mayor Pro Tem Russell and Councilmember Barrington.
Thank you. Next is 11C1, which is the Great Outdoors Colorado Connect Initiative Concept Application. Staff recommends City Council approve by resolution the submittal of a concept paper to Great Outdoors Colorado, GOCO, for the rail trail project. And here to present again is Mr. Wade Burkholder from Planning.
Mayor, Member of Council, the city has the opportunity to submit a concept paper application to Great Outdoors Colorado for furthering the rail trail project from the Oxford Station location south to the Big Dry Creek Trail system, and as well get in the system, if you will, a project that would finish the rail trail project from Oxford Station north to its terminus at Bates Avenue. The rail trail has been discussed many times. It's in most of the long-range planning documents regarding the furtherance of non-motorized pedestrian travel along the north-south corridor along the railroad, and its importance in connecting the Englewood community with the Mary Carter Greenway trails and the Big Dry Creek trails and whatnot. The Connect initiative is in its final year with GOCO, and the process is a multi-stage process. The first step is to submit this concept paper. If GOCO likes the concept of the trail, they will invite a full application in June, and that would come back to you for further resolution in terms of the details of the grant and how it will proceed. But this concept paper just introduces the project to them. There is no obligation in terms of financial dollars tonight. It's simply here's our project, do you like it? In order to do that, we would need a resolution from council to do so. The staff of the Department of Public Works, Parks and Recreation, and Community Development have worked collaboratively on this application, writing the narrative and explaining the process and the phases of the project, and they are all seeking an approval for submittal of this concept paper this evening. As you can see in the staff council communication, we do outline what we think at this point is the funding source. The cap for the grant is $2 million. Obviously, the rail trail for full completion is just under $13 million, so that's why we're looking at a phasing approach. So we would ask for the full $2 million project once we hopefully get to that point in June. And you can see that we do plan to leverage the match that you already have approved for the Oxford Bridge, which was $400,000 as part of the Department of Public Works TIP grant. And then we do have a partnership solidified with the Trust for Public Land in the amount of $100,000. So The grant is a 75-25% split, so the 25% would be met with those two other opportunities that we already have on the books. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell has a question.
My question is on the $400,000 leverage from the Oxford pedestrian bridge. Don't we need that $400,000 for the Oxford pedestrian bridge?
And you still would, yes. It's just that it's part of the rail trail project already, so we can count that towards the match for this project already. Again, so we're counting it for the TIP project, but it's also going towards the GOCO project because it's all part of the rail trail.
So we're not going to have to come up with $400,000 for another thing at some point? Thank you.
Member Sierra.
So just a question regarding the Bates terminal. Is that still, is there still a plan to have that happen, I guess is my question.
It's still in the comprehensive plan and the light rail next steps corridor, whatever the title of that is, document. There's no imminent plans. I don't know that there's any time frame that we'd set on that happening.
But is that an RTD decision, or is that also in conjunction with?
It would be an RTD decision along with the property owner in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Member Berentine?
I think Cuesta beat me.
Okay. Saw them flash at once.
Thank you, Mr. Burkle.
Member Cuesta?
You bet. So total cost of this is $2 million. If we were to receive the $1.5 million GOCO grant award, we need to match 25% of that $2 million. $400K, it looks like, would come from that Oxford pedestrian bridge. So of the $2 million project, $1.9 million would come from grant funds, with the remaining $100,000 coming from that trust.
That's correct.
So really 1.9 of the 2 million would be entirely not out of pocket from Englewood.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Berentine.
A little off the subject, but just to follow up with what Councilmember Sierra brought up, it would be nice to get some clarity on where the Bates station stands. The last time that I believe we got an update on it, there was still a requirement for the city to provide a match on that. They have included it, I think, in every one of their increased tax ploys that ended up being a ploy because we didn't get a station yet. But I think you're right that it still might be in the plan, but I would like to know whether the requirement agreement from back in the late 90s that we would match half is still part of that, and just where we're at with that. I think that's a good question he brings up as we're doing this whole project. Would be good along Santa Fe. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve 11C1. 11C1.
You can have a second.
11C1. Yeah. Second that.
All right. Any further discussion? I just have to say, to me, this is so exciting because I've been working on the South Platte River Group and watching this thing over a number of years on council, and to see one more leg possibly done into Member Cuesta's pointed question, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's not free money. It's everybody's money here, right? Thankfully, some people play the lottery and we get a little bit more from others than we expect, and this is one of them that is very good. And I do think the city match of Englewood of $400,000 being, as Mayor Pro Tem asked about that, it can get confusing to people. So just realizing that we get the opportunity to use all of our grant money against this to be matched to is really a wonderful open process for us to get something big done when it's going to cost even more after this. So I'll be voting yes, thankfully, tonight. Any further comments? Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. 11C2 2, this is your staff recommends City Council award by motion a contract with Mike's Camera in the amount of $67,715 for supply, delivery, installation of a case cracker Onyx 8 system in 7 interview rooms at the new police headquarters building. This award for contract will be spoken about with Director Maria DeAndre.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll stand for any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Was this in the original budget, or is this being paid for with bond premium money?
It was not in the original budget. If you look on the second page of the memo, this was reallocation, and those reallocation dollars are coming from project contingency, but not out of the premium.
So did they realize that we needed this after the fact, or they knew we needed it, but just not what we needed?
Of course, I wasn't around at the time, but I believe that it was always understood that we needed it, but it was never included in the original budget, but knowing that it was coming later.
Okay, and it's because we had contingency money left?
No, I think they always planned on it, but they never allocated any specifically for this line item.
Okay, thank you.
Member Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Director DeAndrea, and I'm just getting to my notes here. So in the summary, it states that the Police and Information Technology Department staff evaluated the existing interview room system performance for use in the new building. So that was the equipment from the old building, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct, yep.
Okay, so there weren't any new specs taken. I guess why wasn't this worked into the budget earlier?
I think that's an excellent question, and to Mayor Pro Tem's point, I believe just in kind of having taken over the project in the last couple of months, it seems like the intent was to get us to a certain point so that we could get the project bid, and that these more specific items, especially these technology items, were to come later as we got more details and were able to do more of this investigative work, if you will, of what the appropriate type of system would be most appropriate. So there was really a push to get to the project to get it underway, knowing that these contracts were going to come later.
Thank you, and I certainly appreciate the necessity for the equipment. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Member Barentine.
So it is being taken out of the the additional bond funding, but it wasn't really anticipated in the original cost then.
So the original project budget had a fair amount of contingency in it. And so I think they set up the budget that way knowing that there were these other pieces to come, but they never specifically set out a line item for interview room cameras, if that makes sense.
We seem to have this happen every council meeting, though, that there's a contingency or something that they had taken out and now they're putting back in that's kind of just eking away at this money, and it doesn't, I'm kind of getting back some push from my constituents that it doesn't look like we had very good planning for all of this. Is there a way to know how many other little nibbles at this that we're going to keep doing until we end up with all the money gone?
Yes, actually, we're planning to come back to you hopefully within the next several weeks to present a complete picture of where we sit with the project, including all use of premium items or premium budget.
And is there, at that time, will we get a list so that we have a complete list and a final list so that we know where everything is going, because this is starting to wear on people?
Yes, that's the intent. We just moved into the building, and so I think we're wrapping up phase 1 now, so we have a good handle on that, all those costs of the building itself. Phase 2 is the demolition and then the construction of the parking lot. So I think we do have a good handle at this point where, again, we can come back to you with all those details and where we wouldn't come to you again in the future.
Because the comments that we took some stuff out to save money and then it gets put back in. So I appreciate that you're looking at that, and we're going to get some final list at the end, but yeah, we got to stop this.
Yep.
Thanks.
I understand. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Are we currently over budget?
We are not. So the last presentation that I forget the date, we showed about $1 million bottom line of being still in positive, even with all the premium additions that we've discussed over a few study sessions.
So, but we're down to $1 million in the premium, so everything has been spent in the budget.
No, we still have some contingency in the base budget for the project or for the building itself.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I have one, actually Member Barentine has another.
I just want a clarification for that. Could you tell us, you know how much is left in the bond premium? How much is left then for contingencies in the building, since you made that a distinction in there?
I'd have to look specifically. I believe at the last accounting that we got from our construction manager, we were around $200,000 in remaining contingency.
We swallow that up quickly, so I'm glad you're coming soon with some numbers.
We will, and we know that we have additional outstanding costs that will eat that up.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is you've worked on big building projects like this, I think, in your past, and just trying to learn from this. Is it common to come back in the way that we are with contingency? Or I know that you bring a new skill set to the city and different ways of doing something from other cities. Is there a way to, if we were to do anything in the future, like for perhaps here, where there be a stronger process for all things being accounted for that seem more like normal? You'd want cameras in your interviewing room. So, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm just trying to get some sense for people who are asking, as well as I'm curious. I want to know.
Certainly. Yeah, I haven't worked on a lot of building projects, but some. And I think, of course, hindsight's 20/20. But I would say that, yes, I think we moved forward very quickly to get the project under construction and bid it out. And so the design plans were not as complete as they could have been. And so therefore, we left a large contingency in the budget, but those amounts didn't necessarily account for all the costs that we've now encountered. So for example, if you look, we had $269,000 budgeted for AV. In reality, that's been increased by another $205,000 because of what actually the building ended up needing. And really not when we talk about needs versus wants, it was just the number of rooms that were involved and the cost of the equipment and the cost of installation. So to answer your question, Mayor, I think there could have been done more work up front to be more specific and to identify some of these costs and put a more closer analysis on what was needed to refine that initial budget more closely.
Thank you. And then the second question really has a follow-up to what you said, that you were going to be coming forward in a couple of weeks to give us a summary of all of this, not a whole bunch more requests necessarily.
There will be more
There will
requests.
be some requests in that. Will you be coming, are you wanting a study session to go over some of this, or is it you're going to come forward here and give us all the last contingency pieces?
I think we're still discussing that internally. It probably lends itself to a study session. There is one change order that we'll be bringing for delay costs, which will be on the April 15th agenda, which is contractual through our contractor. So we do want to move that one forward, but I think the overall budget we do want to discuss with you in a study session.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
I do have one other question on the back side of the council communication where it talks about the budget. It shows all of the reallocations. And so actually the original budget was $405,978. With all of the reallocations, that's an additional $497,715. So the current budget is $903,693. Is that coming from other funds that are not? It's coming from the contingency fund.
Correct. That $497,715 was all contingency. So yes, you can see we've more than doubled our budget for basically IT-related software and hardware.
So did we have other contingency funds other than just for CBRE?
It was for the building, And so it wasn't just for our contractor, Adolphson and Peterson, but it was for items then like this case crackers where the city is contracting with a company to specifically provide these different types of IT. So the second item there, that technology and equipment security systems, that's a contract we brought forward with Security Central, who does all of the key cards and access to the various locations in the building.
Okay, and that was bond premium that was used for that, correct?
I believe it was the base contingency for that. It wasn't, we did not seek additional bond premium contingency for that item.
Okay, so, and if you don't have this right now, do you remember what the original contingency fund was for CBRE, which I believe was for the overall project?
I do not have that number, but I can get that for you.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Could I have a motion to approve the award contract to Mike's Camera for an interview room system?
I move to approve 11C2, award contract to Mike's Camera for an interview room management system.
Thank you. Second. Wink is second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you.
Our last item of 11C3 is contribution to the Metro Mayor Flex Fund. Staff recommends and requests direction actually from City Council to approve a contribution of $1,000 to the Metro Mayor and Metro Denver Homeless Initiative Flex Fund. Here to present is Interim City Manager Dorothy Hargrove.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I would just point out that the City of Englewood agreed to make a contribution to this fund, which will be matched 100% in 2015, and this is a request to repeat that $1,000 contribution to work with regional partners to help people exit homelessness.
Thank you. Any questions about this fund? Member Barentine.
It's being taken out of the aid to outside agencies. I'm surprised why doesn't it happen at the time so that we can get an application with the information that we normally get for that?
I am only aware that this request came from the Metro Mayor's Fund in the last couple of months.
Is there any other aid to other agencies that we do outside of the normal process once a year?
Not that I'm aware of.
Then I'm just concerned that we're doing it from that fund outside of that process. We generally get an application and some really good information on what they're doing with the funding at that time, and I'm not sure that fund has it always come out of that fund, or
I'm not sure where the money came in 2015, to be honest.
Pardon?
When we made the donation in 2015 from the city, I'm not sure what fund it came from.
Okay. I'm concerned about the fund coming out of there and kind of doing a different process. I don't think it's fair to the other people or to this council when they make a decision on whether we're even going to do aid to other agencies, which we had a pretty robust discussion about this last time.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
In response to what Councilmember Barentine was asking, I believe in our discussion of the aid to other agencies fund, we were only going to give to in-kind donations this year. I don't think that we took money out of that. Is there any other place that we could get this money from?
It could come out of the city manager's budget someplace. I'm trying to think. There is money both in city council and city managers' budgets for memberships and dues, and this could be considered part of being a member of the Metro Mayors Association.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you. I'm looking through the literature they provided. So the organization is the Metro Mayor Flex Fund?
That's the overall name of it, yes.
And they're a 501c or they're a nonprofit?
I assume so.
I believe we are, yes. And every mayor in the metro area is a member of it by I guess, I don't know how that comes about. I don't know if the city
It seems, well, one more question. Do we know that any of this money from the 2015 contribution made it back to Englewood?
I don't know specifically.
I can speak to that. I can also send you, they gave us an update today to tell us who else had joined in. I think 3 more cities have added in. When we did this before, I think, remember Jefferson might have been, I know he was at one of the events where there was a huge gathering, and I believe the money either came out of our aid agencies or the manager's department. I think when I submitted this forward, I think I sent you something about a month ago about it because I wanted us to take a look at it, and then finally ended up on the agenda. I didn't want it to be on when we had too many things. And I'm fine with wherever it comes from. It does impact us, regardless of whether it goes directly to someone who's considered Englewood. I can give you I can't find it right now. There's an email we got today on it, though, and I'm not finding it. But every city's benefited in some ways on this because every person that they find housing for is one less person on the street that then receives resources from here. But I believe that we do have people from the Englewood area that have received funds from this.
So just point of information on page 4 of the PDF, on the left-hand side, it does say that there was one family housed in Englewood.
Which costs anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 depending on how they do it. The thing about this particular one is that this time the Denver Foundation is matching up to $50,000 or $60,000 total. So there's a time frame of it as well, and we're just a little bit further down the line than some of the others. Several more cities are considering it, but we're hopefully going to get all of that to go into this. We have, it took us 2 years, or it took Metro mayors 3 years to expend all that money, and it's a very specific process that they go through for every family that they can get into housing and do the resources that are needed to help actually keep them in housing and thriving.
And I don't want to doubt the probably very good work this group does. It does rehash a conversation to me that we've had prior, which is who do we decide who we contribute money to, and why is this group more necessitating of that over another group? And that's what I get held up on here is I assume this group reached out to us because we made a donation back in 2015, but there's other groups that I know we turned down earlier in the year that also were probably very commendable on what they did as well. And so that's where I get to a bit of a conflict within myself is if we're going to give away city funds, taxpayer dollars, which charities or charitable organizations would we give them to, nonprofits? And why is anyone deserving more than another? And I get hung up on that. And the easy way out of that is just to say that citizens should make their own donations to them, and the city should not venture into that. But I know that there's also needy organizations out there that put this money to good work, probably. So that's what I get hung up on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. If I could explain a little bit, all the mayors are a part of this group, and as a result, we do projects together, and this is one of them, and it's a regional approach to homelessness that's part of this. So it's not just a 501c3 that's an agency working in our city, it's an actual entity with decision-making only to the point where we bring things back to our council. So it's a resource board to one another. And so it's a little different than an aid to other agencies kind of group, but I can see why that fund may not be the appropriate fund for this, because I do recall that we said we were just not going to expend that fund this year. Perhaps there's another place to use it. If there's another one out of city council, we're not using all of our CML money, perhaps others. Councilmember Barentine, and I just sent this on to you.
Thank you.
I would have to echo what Councilmember Cuesta said. My concern is that this goes into a kiddie pool of all of the mayors, and I'm sure that you have some very good conversations with the other mayors, but they have needs, and that we're pulling from what's going on in a much larger community, and we put a requirement on the ones that come to aid to other agencies that they're serving Englewood, and there is not a guarantee that this directly will. We have a lot of organizations that indirectly influence us, and you're correct, we did not fund them either. So maybe there is another fund that the mayor, for the Mayor Flex Fund for this group, can go ahead and garner this money. I'm sure that it's good work, but I hate to put the funding into another group of politicians' hands that all have other agendas and needs too. So is there another place we could take the money from, because I just think that the aid to outside agencies, it's a hot button. We've discussed it. We've made it very clear what we wanted, and this is outside that parameter.
If so directed, I can certainly recommend another fund and determine whether there's adequate funding in there and it would be appropriate.
Thank you. Any other questions? Could I have a motion to approve so we can go into discussion?
I move to approve 11C3, contribution to Metro Mayor Flex Fund.
A second?
I'll second.
Right. I think it would be wise to maybe do it in another fund. And I probably was just thinking, okay, when this came up, where would we take it? It makes sense from there. But I do recall that we said we were not going to use that. So if there's another place to take it, I would love to see us do this.
Could we make an
Golden,
amendment now?
excuse me, could
Are you making an amendment now to do it?
I am going to, not yet. I wanted to give you a little bit more information. There's Golden, Lakewood, Littleton, Sheridan, and Wheat Ridge and Lone Tree have now each given $1,000 to $2,500. Sheridan just gave $500 recently too. So just so you know, and then there's been, I think in that memo that I sent you earlier, it's the same, it's fairly the same. Almost all the cities contribute, and it's not managed by mayors. This goes into a group that actually does homeless work and is part of the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, MDHI. So there's people who actually know what they're doing with this. This is not, we don't decide, pick and choose who gets something. It's really set up to be a fund for everyone to make sure. So I've sent that along to you. I would be fine in suggesting that we take it out of any contingency funds that might be left in just the city council funds, because I think that's supported the mayors in the past when they've gone to conferences that maybe were not, traditional conferences. I remember when I think several mayors in the past have done things like that. So I would recommend that we take it out of city council's budget, which has extra funds in it at this point. I don't know what it is. So, Councilmember Martinez, I think, is next.
Sure. Thank you. Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. I would like to see us support this. I think it makes a lot of sense, and all the examples that are given of how this flex fund is used, I think really helps a lot of people. And it says in here at least one person was housed in Englewood, so to me that really means a lot. I would like to see us support this at $1,000, excuse me, and I think if we could take it out of just general city council budget, I would feel comfortable with that.
Councilmember Barentine.
I was for it just coming out of another account, but now you made an additional comment that this actually is another organization that they're supporting that we didn't really get as much information as we would have required from anybody else that we were giving money to. I'm not against supporting it. I think if this comes forward again, that we really need to have a lot more information, at least similar to what we would require of anybody else. We don't have enough of the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. That's what you're saying now that we're actually giving the money to. And that somebody is housed here isn't addressing whether that was serving somebody that was actually an Englewood resident or just that they were housed here. So I'm just getting more concerns about it. I don't mind it coming out of the city council budget, travel. I'm not traveling. You could go ahead and take it out of there. And I'm glad to see it not come out of outside agencies. But if it comes forward again, we really need to treat this with the same import that we do all of the expenditures of taxpayer money and the requirements that we make of all of the other organizations, even when they're not made up of mayors.
Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
The one thing that concerned me, and I'm okay with moving forward with this and taking it out of city council travel. I'm not going anywhere either. It says, I believe it's on page 2 of the Flex Fund, in January, Metro Mayor's Caucus dispersed the last of the 2015 funding held in reserve along with contributions from Littleton and Lone Tree. The $7,000 was matched by a grant of $10,000 from the Denver Foundation. We are now seeking additional donations from our member cities in order to keep the fund solvent. So I would like more information in the future when it comes forward. But I will support this coming from council budget, whether it's the travel fund or...
Would you like to make an amendment then to that effect? Are you willing to?
Yes. I would move that we amend the contribution to the Metro Ameriflex Fund to come out of the council travel budget. I believe there should be enough money in that.
There is. Thank you.
Could I have a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote on the amendment of it coming out of the City Council General Fund or Travel Fund.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 6 ayes and 1 nay, the 1 nay being Councilmember Cuesta.
All right, then back to the original affirming the entire thing, approving $1,000 to now go into through the Councilmember Barentine.
With the additional information that you gave, while I do support it coming out of something out from the aid to outside agencies, I can't in good conscience go ahead and vote for something when we have so little information on this and we've required it from other people. I just am not comfortable with it at this point. So I'm glad it's not coming out of the aid to outside agencies, but I just won't be supporting it tonight.
Any further comments? All right.
So now what are we voting on? We voted first on my amendment?
Yes, and now we're voting on approving that $1,000 go and, no, we don't have to do it like that? Yes, we do.
Okay, that's fine.
Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead if you have something more.
Actually, so it's not my motion we're voting on now, we're voting on the original motion.
Right.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I know I mess up sometimes, so.
It does make sense, and I am concerned too about the lack of information, so.
Okay, great.
Can I just make a clarification?
Councilwoman Barentine, yes.
That we voted on the amendment, and that if this passes, it's going to come out of a council budget, but we're voting now separately on whether we want to spend the money at all.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mayor.
Please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 4 ayes and 3 nays, the 3 nays being Mayor Pro Tem Russell, Councilmember Barentine, and Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is I want to make sure it's been an hour and a half. Does anybody need a break before the end, or we just push through? Because I know at one point it sounded like someone wanted a break. Are we okay? Everyone okay? All right. General discussion. Oh gosh, let's start with council members' choice because I need to figure out something from some of the unscheduled comments. So would someone like to begin with council members' choice?
I can begin.
Member Barentine, first up. Go for it.
You sure?
Councilmember Sarah spoke up first. Let him.
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and get started. I guess just to start off, did the city manager get a copy of the documentation provided by Ms. Hoffman tonight? Because I think it probably would help in terms of the council request that was raised earlier. I did not. Okay. Could somebody else provide her a copy just because I already wrote on mine? I just noticed that it wasn't apples to apples, so there's just a few things here that, the one for the Centennial address is for a full year, the other one is just a quarterly, so just a few things that stood out in my mind in terms of why there is a difference in the pricing. And then the second thing I did want to bring up was just a thank you to everybody that came out during the Alley Town Hall discussion that we had just about 2 weeks ago now. So thank you very much to staff, the Director DeAndre, Director Power, and also the Chief Building Official Montanez. They did a great job just providing just a little bit of overview of what the plan was for the alleys, as well as just a lot of action items came out from citizens in terms of what they're seeing with their alleys. There was a response by Director DeAndre in terms of what the short-term plan is for addressing the alleys. I'm not sure if council received that, but I did send it out to email to a lot of the people that did provide their email addresses. Some bounced back, so I'm sorry if they didn't receive that, but I do plan on updating the citizens when I do receive just a council request on the initial one, which we said would be about a couple weeks, so maybe this Thursday we may be receiving a response as part of council request on that, and then obviously there's going to be a longer term, some items that were a longer term issue that we should hear probably within another couple weeks. So But just thank you very much to the citizens that reached out and talked about it, and some of the other issues that came up in terms of the alleys as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Berentine.
I do appreciate Councilmember Sierra having that meeting. I was, I believe somebody attempted to, at least somebody was filming there. I wish I had known that, but I don't think it was the city. But I did get a lot out of that. I have, somebody had forwarded me the email that you're sending out to all of the people that signed up, and I would really appreciate it if you would go ahead and make sure that all of council has that. Part of the concern is that there's a lot of council requests in there, some of them listed as white paper kind of issues, and of course we want to make sure that all of council is directing those kind of activities. Not just one council member, putting that out there. So you want to have our support in what we're doing. There was a real pushback from people very concerned about the responses to a lot of questions, being that the city does not keep records of maintenance or records of how they're, what it would cost to do just one alley. Or, I mean, that answer happened 4 or 5 times, and so we want to make sure that we're getting some information out there to let people know that when we spend their money, we have records. When we do maintenance, that we keep records, that we have some kind of a process and procedure, and have for the whole time I've been involved with the city. So I'm looking forward to that information getting out. So if Councilmember Sierra, you could forward that email on to all of council, I would greatly appreciate it. The a question came up on the emails within the city from Kathleen Bailey regarding the meeting from Congresswoman DeGette, and there was an answer back from the mayor, and I wanted that to be a council request. I have to at least state that publicly because it happened within the emails that council only saw. There was a question that was asked during the DeGette meeting: how much would it cost, and that was directed to the Public Works Director, how much would it cost if we got everything for our stormwater infrastructure? And she said $80 to $100 million. When that was questioned, it was thought maybe from the mayor that she meant all of our infrastructure, and then that was clarified in the council request that I did, that it is not, that it is $80 to $100 million, and more than likely more than that, only for the stormwater infrastructure, but they're waiting for Calibre to come back and finish up their report. That would fit more with what Calibre was telling people during that community meeting. As a matter of fact, their number was a lot higher. Hopefully we can get some of the $250,000 or $250 million that's available to all of the municipalities nationwide. But I know there was some joking at that meeting that what we were talking about was already half of what's been set aside for the country. So I'm sure we'll get more of an update when the Calibre report comes out. When is that going to be, by the way? I didn't see that on the schedule.
I'd have to double check on an exact date. I think by the end of May.
Yeah. Currently,
let me double check before you vote that.
Currently, when I was asked by a constituent, I did look at, and I didn't see it on our schedule. So just let me know when.
I will. I'll follow up with all.
All right. Thank you. And then I have been relentless on asking for the emergency operating plan, and I have been very frustrated in trying to get that information. I was glad to see that I did get the emergency operating draft that was paid for in 2014 with an $85,000 grant. And at that time, it was identified that we had an employee specific, Mr. Green, I believe it is, and his employee designation was as emergency manager coordinator. I don't know what happened to him or to Rose Lynch or what happened, but when our new city manager was hired, apparently I would assume that the city manager would know whether we have an emergency plan in place and what's going on. The draft was provided to everybody in the council request. One of the questions that I asked was to get a report documenting the completion of the grant and the expenditures of the grant fund, which was a little over $85,000, to go ahead and do an emergency plan, update the one we had because we did have one in place, and for people to take classes and be trained. And the response to that, how did we expend the grant, and what the documentation is, the team was unable to locate any additional documents related to the grant beyond the ordinance. So the only thing that exists is the ordinance providing the grant, no documentation whatsoever on us spending $85,000. And we are currently in a position where we are now with no emergency plan, supposedly, in this. We had the meeting in August, and we really need to get on this right away to make sure we have an emergency plan for the city and for this building, that we're following the laws that we expect the rest of the people in this community to follow, and that we get on this. This is too long, and it's too dangerous for our community. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Cuesta, can we?
Sure.
Pick up on you next.
Tammy Williamson's presentation to us this evening has stuck with me since she gave it, and it is really just, it is in the pit of my stomach what is going on there, and it's over, and it's over, and it's over. We keep getting this. As I'm looking at the short-term rental summary we were given today, currently city staff working with the city attorney's office is working to enforce compliance with our existing code on properties identified as being used as short-term rentals. I then go to the traveling nurse site that Ms. Williams gave to us, I believe a couple months ago now. There's still 3 separate bedrooms available all month to month. This is a long-term rental. It is an apartment complex within an R1C. Again, I just don't know how we keep getting up here. I don't know how everybody isn't bothered by what they saw tonight. Again, I can't take it. It's driving me crazy, and we look so weak. I just feel like we're doing nothing about this, and we keep saying, well, we got to think about some more. We got to consider short-term rentals, and I just see no action being taken. And this woman seems to be pleading with us to do something, and we are just doing absolutely nothing. I feel like I've asked staff many times, and other council members up here have, and we keep hearing, well, we're looking at it, we're working with them, and I just feel that there is zero progress being made. She certainly seems to be echoing that, and I've truly lost patience at this point. I am out of patience. I don't know how many more times I'm going to be able to see her come up here and do that. I think that was the last one for me. I'm really hoping staff is moving on this. Now, there was the allusion to a potential court case. It wasn't specified it was this specific matter, but I really hope something is being done. To me, I don't see how this is clearly outside the boundaries of what's legal or compliant with our code, not to mention the suffering that this citizen is enduring, along with the entire neighborhood. I'm going to take it home with me tonight. It's probably going to be with me there tomorrow. It just keeps bothering me, and it seems to get progressively worse. Everybody's aware of it, and we're doing nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Wink?
No report.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
I would like to echo exactly what Councilmember Cuesta just shared. It was incredibly upsetting when she came up to the microphone and I did not even recognize her. I believe that we are being negligent to the health and safety of the citizens in this city, and we need to do something. This council is powerless, and I believe that this council needs to step up to the plate and do something about it. I do not want this to go on one more week. And it's not just her property. There are other properties in the city. So I am actually asking for that to be taken care of immediately. I have some other council requests, and this goes along with the one for Ms. Hoffman. I believe one thing that, and there were a couple of things, Councilmember Martinez addressed them, but I believe one thing she is Ms. Hoffman is asking, why are Englewood residents paying more for their sewer bill than the outside districts? Her house in Centennial happens to be in the same district as her rental in Englewood, and it is very clear that her house in Englewood is paying substantially more for their sewer bill than those outside. That is unacceptable. That question was asked this summer when Peter Van Rye came forward, that we need to make sure that the outside districts are paying more. It is our sewer plant. We paid for the infrastructure, and so did the city of Littleton. And those people that are using our services need to be paying more than our citizens. And I want to make sure that is taken care of. So the question is, why are Englewood residents paying more? My next request is I would like a list of all emergency management grant agreements and funding that the city of Englewood has received since 2007. And then Councilmember Barentine asked my other one about when Calibre is coming. So we just need to make sure that we get that on the agenda in the mayor-manager meeting. Then I also have a report. I have gotten this report from different places for a while, and this needs to be addressed also, that homeless people are slipping into traditions at night before the doors are locked. And I believe that they're sleeping in the garage downstairs, sleeping in other rooms. Something needs to be done about that. That is a vulnerable population, and we need to make sure that they are secure in that building. And then also, apparently on February 20th, there was a 5-hour training with Homeland Security. Was anyone from Englewood sent to that training for emergency management?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez?
No report.
All right, I have a...
Just quickly, point of information, Mayor Pro Tem, where were the homeless people slipping into before?
Into the traditions. It is a mostly senior housing unit.
Thank you.
By the Safeway in Hamden.
You're asking for the entrance?
That was it, just the facility. Thank you.
I'll start out with council requests because I do want to ask interim city manager, we're asking for a lot. I think that some of the things that have come forward are important items. I'm not going to judge one against the other, but I'm afraid that sometimes things might take longer, and I know when we had Manager Keck here, we agreed that he would tell us when something might take longer, or at least we get more consensus if it's something that it's going to take a long time, and I'd like to ask you to continue to do that with us so that we are not expecting something the next day when it's unrealistic. And I know that's hard for you to probably have to sort through that all, but tonight you were asked for something going back to 2000. I don't know how long that might take you to do. If that's something you want all of us to get consensus on before we ask you to do that and other things like that, would that?
I appreciate the question, and I have been working with staff to say this is a longer report. It needs to be comprehensive. It's not just a quick answer that we could answer in a day or two. The report that I hope you've received in your weekly packet, we've tried to track the council requests a little more clearly, and those that say in progress we're working on. Anything else we ought to be able to turn around fairly quickly. But I will say it's very difficult to, explain these to staff by Tuesday morning and have an answer by Wednesday afternoon when it has to go into the packet. So a really quick turnaround is very difficult in the majority of cases. But we do try to keep you apprised when something is in progress, so that you can see what's coming and what to expect. Is that helpful?
I find it helpful. What I'm worried about is you having an awful lot of requests from each one of us for things that maybe not everyone wants or needs to move forward on something, and then you take a lot of time on that in expense for perhaps something else that we all really wish we had. So if you can see that coming, it would be helpful. I guess I could just ask tonight if there's anything that council feels like is onerous for our interim city manager, and we'd say, a week or two is fine for that, or it's going to take several months. I guess I'm just asking for I'm opening the door up for you to speak to us to say, I can't do all of this with this many.
That's very much the case. It takes an enormous amount of time. It's information that City Council deserves. I know that there's been some discussion about helping to prioritize or to come to a consensus before asking us to do a lot of research instead of it having one by one by one. One thing I find frustrating, if I may speak frankly, is to have to answer council requests that we've tried to address succinctly over and over. You know, we're happy to provide information if it's not clear, but sometimes the depth of the research wasn't indicated the first time, or we failed to provide that. But to be cognizant, you know, there's not a congressional research service at your call. I mean, you're kind of looking at it. So being cognizant of that when you ask for council requests in abundance would be much appreciated.
Perhaps what I'm getting at, thank you, that was really helpful, is let us know, you know, within a day or two if you think something's going to take a lot longer. Please just let us know so that we're not expecting something and then we come after you again for it. Maybe that's where it's just letting you have that time. So you know what, this is going to take weeks to do.
All right.
Or 3 weeks.
Would it be appropriate at in the Thursday packet to say, here are all the council requests, this one is going to take longer, this we have an answer to this week, or would you like that earlier in the week before that comes?
I think that would be reasonable.
Could I get a point of clarification for what you're asking?
Sure.
I mentioned the email that Councilmember Sierra sent out to everybody, and what he put in there was all the action items and things that people were going to work on. How are we supposed to come forward then and all discuss it if we're all doing council requests in a different manner? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if we want to prioritize, or you mentioned if other council members don't think that that's appropriate to ask for, other people don't want that, if we're just going ahead and putting those kind of lists together, how do you want them presented so that we're doing it to council and everybody's acknowledging? Like when I did mine, I said, I want to put this as a council request instead of just that email to you. So I thought if I send it to all the council, at least everybody's acknowledging it. So how do you want to do that?
Thank you. That helps clarify, because I think it's like there's a cart before the horse almost on this. One of the ways that Manager Keck did do it was when he thought it was something, and I think all of us should be able to send council requests in whenever we see something, and I don't believe we should have to be spending time on an evening, all of us telling us what they are. But for the manager to be able to say when they get one, wow, I want to get some more council's input on this because it's going to take some time. He did that once, and he came back to us and said, Council, so-and-so has asked for this. Is that a wish of all of you? Because this is going to take 3 to 4 weeks, or it even could take longer. And I think that's what I want to make sure is in place, because I don't believe that the way that we're going about doing our council requests with telling everyone what they are right now in an email like you have been doing is appropriate either, but I can see why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. So I would prefer that we send them directly to the city manager, and she asks us if she thinks this is something that is going to be a lot of work, it's going to take time. Do others want this quickly as well to make a decision? Then it makes sense.
And I guess the other clarification would be that I think we've all made the point with each other that we wanted to go ahead and make sure we all knew what the council requests were. One, so that we weren't duplicating things, and two, so that we made sure that they were something that we all kind of thought was a necessary thing. Sometimes with newer members, there may be something that's already been kind of gone down that road, and I think in that list that maybe some of those could be combined, which is why I think it should be sent to all of council so that there could be some input on that and not making it look like one council member is directing. So I do agree that we should go ahead and have some communication so we all know what the council requests are, because I think we can inundate them if we're just giving them to them. So I'm not sure how you want to handle that.
Again, I would prefer, and I thought this is what we had decided, that they would go to the city manager and she would put it into city council or city council requests. And if she thought it was too much, that she would come back to all of us and say, so-and-so requested this. Is that true for more people? But if that's not how we want to do it, we certainly can put it on the agenda for study session next week to sort it out. Well, I'm not comfortable with the emails that are going out to all of us, alerting to us, and then none of us can really respond. It's not really, I don't think that's the best way to be doing it either.
It's kind of behind a rock and a hard spot. I understand trying not to do it through what somebody might perceive, although it's legal, through your own communication piece, and then not making sure that the rest of council knows without making sure that all of council knows, and then having the problem be that all of council knows. So it is quite a conundrum, but I'm trying to work through it, and I will do whatever this council sees.
All right, so what I would prefer is that we do the way we have been, that it goes to everybody when it goes into council requests, and that if it is something that seems onerous and a lot of time, city manager comes back to us and asks for more input from others. Case closed. I would hope that Councilmember Cuesta could, whenever he wants, to talk about the Williamson case directly and say, I need more information. That makes total sense. I would not want me to hold that up, nor anyone else. I think it's the right thing to do. It goes into the public record that's been asked for. Cuesta's name is on it. Goes forward. Anyway, and we can put it on. I don't want to belabor this any further.
No, I'd be happy to come up with some alternatives and talk about process that would help keep that transparency and accountability.
Yeah, if you can think of some other ways, and perhaps the city attorney or the clerk can set in motion something because of the open records thing to make sure that we're in compliance.
No, I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
That was a big one. And then the alleys update, I appreciated Councilmember Sierra talking about that. I have had a number of people call me and thank me for whatever work has been done. So some people are noticing, so it would be helpful to have that update. Several weeks ago, and I never let you know this, I had a meeting with Dr. Jandel Allen Davis. Some of you may know she's the new CEO president of Craig Hospital. We're friends from another walk of life, so it was great to see her in that setting. I'm very encouraged with her leadership there, and I would like to request that we set up our hospital liaison group, and I don't remember how we decided the last time. It's been done differently every year, whether it's just the two liaisons that meet with Craig and Swedish leaders and our city manager just to get an update, or whether all of council does it. We've done that before too, and have a breakfast like we do with Congresswoman DeGette, where we get an update on everything. But I'm really encouraged because her style of leadership is really to up the game when it comes to community engagement. That's been her, and she wants to